Hey guys, here's a short how-to video on how to make an electromagnet. Um, to make an electromagnet, you need three things, okay? You need an iron core, so you need a piece of iron to serve as the core of your electric magnet or your electromagnet. You need wire, so you can make a coil of wire to wrap around that iron core. And you need a source of current, okay? Now, my guess is probably in 8th grade, maybe even 5th grade, you probably made some electromagnets in your science class. For the iron core, you probably use something like a nail, a piece of steel, which has a high iron content, so something like that. Your wire could just be some insulated copper wire to get your coil of wire. And you probably made something like this. You took the nail and wrapped it tightly with quite a few coils of wire. Okay, so this gives you the iron core, and then you've got the coil of wire going around the iron core. And then you probably used a battery for a power supply, and you would attach the battery and create the electromagnet. Now, just to make things more convenient, I've got a power supply back here. So instead of messing around with the battery, I've got a DC direct current power supply here. And the electromagnet, I turn it on and run some current through it. You can see that it makes a magnet, okay, when we run current through it. Now, properties of electromagnets, okay? A couple of things that are important. Okay, electromagnets, and so I've got a regular magnet here. We're going to compare the properties of electromagnets and regular magnets. A regular magnet creates a magnetic field, and you can see evidence of that magnetic field when you move it around a compass. Okay, an electromagnet also does that. Okay, now it doesn't do anything if you don't have it turned on. Okay, but if you turn it on, run some current through it, now you can see that it makes the needle jump around. Okay. Also, now we can't really see magnetic fields, but you can see evidence of magnetic fields with iron filings. Okay. So what iron filings are, I put some iron filings on a piece of white paper here so you can see them. All iron filings are just little chips of metal. Literally, if you take a piece of iron and you file it, it makes these little metal chips. Kind of the same way that if you saw wood with a saw, you get sawdust. Well, if you file iron with a file, you get iron filings. And I'm in my shop here. I do a lot of metal work in here, so my shop is full of these iron filings everywhere. But we can use those iron filings to see the magnetic field of a magnet. So if I take a regular magnet and put it under the paper, you can see how the iron filings move around in response to the magnetic field, and you can kind of see the shape of the magnetic field. Okay, likewise, we can do the same thing with the electromagnet. Okay, if the electromagnet's turned off and I put it under the iron filings, it doesn't do anything. Okay, but if I turn on the electromagnet and put it under, you can see the same thing. You can see the shape of the magnetic field. You can see the shape of the magnetic field from the electromagnet. Okay. Now, so we can see that their magnetic properties of a regular magnet and an electromagnet are very similar. They're the same, basically. But the key difference between a regular magnet and an electromagnet is that you can turn the electromagnet off. You can't turn this off. This kind of magnet is always on. It does not change. On the other hand, an electromagnet can be turned on and off. You just run the current through it or turn the current off, and that makes it very useful. Okay, for the last last part of this video, we're going to talk about how to make a stronger electromagnet. Okay, so the way you make a stronger electromagnet, let's consider the parts of an electromagnet. We have the iron core, we have the coils of wire, and we have the source of the current. The way you make a stronger electromagnet is to increase each one of these, okay? So with the iron core, you know, in 8th grade, if you made an electromagnet with a nail, okay, and wrapped this with wire, if you use this as your iron core, well, if you had this available, this would make a stronger electromagnet. If you wrapped each one of these with 20 coils of wire, this piece of iron would make a stronger electromagnet than this piece of iron. So by increasing the size of the iron core, you make the electromagnet stronger. The second thing that you can do to make the electromagnet stronger is to increase the number of coils. The more times I wrap the wire around the iron core, the more coils of wire there are, the stronger the electromagnet, okay? And then the third thing that we can do to make an electromagnet stronger is to increase the source of the current. Now, in your 8th grade science class, you may have used a battery, you know, like a 1.5 volt battery, something like this. May have been a D cell, but it's still 1.5 volts. I'm going to use a power supply here. This goes up to 15 volts DC. This is a safe supply that we can use in a school setting. This is one of the school's power supplies. You know, obviously there are a lot more powerful sources than that. So we could run a lot more current through an electromagnet to make it stronger, but we're going to run about 15 volts. But anyway, let's look at that. Okay, here is an electromagnet that my class made 2 years ago. And we made this electromagnet from we harvested the transformer from a broken down 1500 watt kitchen microwave. So just like a regular microwave you'd have in your kitchen, like a large size one, a 1500 watt one. And you can see it says on the back here high voltage, and it gives you some specifications. But this was the transformer that was inside that microwave. And what we did is that we cut off the bottom of the transformer, and we got rid of some of the other things, the other electronic parts. And what that left us with is a big piece of iron, an iron core. I would guess this probably weighs about 5 pounds, and a whole lot of coils of wire. And if you can see those wire coils there, I have no idea how many those are, but certainly it would be there's hundreds of coils there. I don't know how many that is, but you can see that's quite a bit of copper wire wrapped around this iron core, okay? So this is going to make a really good electromagnet. Let's look at some of the things that we can do with this electromagnet. Okay, you know, with your little 8th grade magnet, you may have been able to pick up a few paper clips, okay? With this magnet, okay, the magnet we've got here, you can just pick up the whole box of paper clips. You can hear the paper clips hit the roof of the box, and you can just pick up the whole thing. Here I've got a piece of metal. Let's pick this up with this. Geez. Okay, and you got to keep your fingers out of the way of this, or you might need some stitches. Okay. Here is it's a crankshaft from a motorcycle. It's all solid steel. It's pretty heavy. No problem picking it up with this electromagnet. Here's a 10-pound weight. Turn the magnet on. Again, no problem picking it up with the electromagnet. In fact, I don't really know how strong this magnet is. But what I've done here, I don't know if you can see this really well, but what I've done is I've put this magnet on top of the shop vise here in my shop on my bench. So I'll turn on the power supply, okay? And I'm not strong enough to pull the magnet off the bench, but you can see that if I were stronger, it feels like I could probably pick up the whole workbench. Just because it's so strongly attached to the vise. So as you can see, it's really, you know, it's pretty easy to make a really strong electromagnet. If you've got a big iron core, you've got plenty of coils of wire, and you've got a decent power supply, you can make an electromagnet that's very, very strong.